All right, it's time to go over our study guide for our test tomorrow on plot. Since you've already had the study guide and you've been working through it on your own, I'm not going to read through every single passage. Instead, if you need to pause the video and skim back over the passage just to jog your memory, you are absolutely welcome to do so, and I will look back and refer back to the passage as needed as we're looking at each question and explaining our answer choices. So let's start with our first passage about Clarice the Clown and her friend Jasmine, who steps in to fill Clarice's shoes one night when Clarice is sick. So here is question number 1. Which part of the plot is Mr. Parsons' offer to hire Jasmine as a clown? So in which part of the plot do we see Mr. Parsons offer Jasmine a job as a clown? Option A says High Point. This is not even a plot element. High Point is not a plot element, so we can automatically take that one off our list. We know it's not A. B says Conclusion. Conclusion again is not a plot element that we've learned, so we can knock that one off our list. Introduction. If you remember the story, it's certainly the offer to Jasmine to be a clown certainly does not come at the introduction, at the beginning of the story. We don't see it until toward the end, so we can knock introduction out as an answer choice. The only option that leaves is D, resolution. And if I check back into my passage, I'll see that the job offer comes at the end of the story. It is part of the resolution. So D, resolution. This is how Jasmine's problem of being tired of just being a helper and wanting to be a clown instead is resolved. D, resolution. Question number 2. Now mine is cut off, but if you're looking at your paper study guide, you'll see question 2 asks, what happens during the climax of this passage? So check back in with yourself. Remember that climax is the most intense moment of the story. It's the turning point. It's the moment where the conflict or the problem is at its biggest. So let's look through each of these options and ask ourselves, is the problem at its biggest? Is the moment most intense? And is this a turning point? A, Mr. Parsons knocks on the door of Clarice's trailer. Is this a very intense moment in the story? A moment of great suspense when the problem is at its biggest? Absolutely. The problem here is very big. Mr. Parsons knocking at the door and Clarice just knows and Jasmine just knows that they are about to get the axe. Option B, the two friends performed together for many years. Well, this didn't even happen until the very end of the story. It's not a moment of intensity, it's the last line. We know it can't be the climax because it's the very, very end of the story. Climax usually comes toward the middle, so we can knock that one off as an answer choice. Jasmine offers to take Clarice's place in the show. This happens closer to the middle of the story. Is this a moment of great intensity? Probably not. We do see some excitement happening here. The excitement is starting to build as Jasmine realizes she might have a chance to play the part of a clown, but it's not the most intense moment of the story. That's a turning point, so we can knock that one off. Clarice tells Jasmine she's afraid she'll be fired. Again, like C, this is a moment that builds some suspense, but it's not the most exciting moment of the story, so we can knock that one off. That leaves A, Mr. Parsons knocks on the door of Clarice's trailer. The problem is definitely at its biggest here. Clarice is sick, and she hatched the plan for Jasmine to take her place, and now her worst nightmare she believes is about to come true. She feels she's about to get fired. Question 3. How is paragraph 5 important to the plot of this passage? Anytime you see a question asking you how a paragraph or a line is important to the plot of the passage, you need to ask yourself, what does this line or this paragraph or this excerpt do to affect the events in the story? How does this excerpt affect the events in the story? How does it show or affect the events in the story? So let's look back at paragraph 5. Jasmine comforted her friend. I could go in your place, she suggested. We're about the same size, and I know your part from watching you perform. So just checking in with myself, what happens in this paragraph? How does it affect the events in the story? I see Jasmine reassuring her sick friend and hatching the plan of taking her place in the circus performance and pretending to be her friend as a clown. So let's see our answer choices. A, it suggests that Jasmine could lose her job. Did paragraph 5 suggest at all that Jasmine was about to lose her job? No, it made no mention of this. We can eliminate A. B, it tells how Jasmine is going to help her friend. Does it show how Jasmine will be helping her friend in this story? Yes, this is a good answer choice for us. C, it shows that Jasmine is a very aware person. This doesn't seem to connect very much to what I actually read in the paragraph. Jasmine might be an aware person. I'm not really sure, and that paragraph certainly didn't go above and beyond to paint her out to be a very aware person. So this one seems a little random. It's definitely not going to be a best answer choice, so I'm going to eliminate C. D, it shows that Jasmine is tired of hauling water. Our other paragraphs earlier in the passage showed that Jasmine was tired of hauling water, but did this paragraph mention anything about hauling water or Jasmine being tired of her job? No, that was not discussed specifically in this paragraph, so I can eliminate that one. That leaves answer choice B. This definitely shows how Jasmine is going to help her friend later in the plot. Question 4. The part of a story that brings it to a close is the... Now, I sent you a message on Remind in case you missed it. One of the answer choices here is denouement. It's a French word. It's another word for resolution. Resolution. So D really means the conclusion, the resolution of the story. So let's look at our answer choices. The part of a story that brings it to a close, meaning ends the story, is the A, exposition. Exposition happens at the very beginning of the story. It introduces us to the characters, so we know it's not A. B, falling action. Falling action does come toward the end of the story. It does help to bring a story to a close. So that's a possible choice. C, rising action. Like exposition, rising action happens at the beginning of the story. It certainly doesn't close it out. And last option is D, denouement or resolution. The resolution is the final moment of the story that closes it out completely. So if I'm choosing between resolution and falling action, which one best brings the story or most brings the story to a close? Resolution is the best answer. Its number one job is to close the story, to end the story. Resolution, D. Let's look at our next question. Again, mine is cut off, but you'll see yours. Question number 7. Question number 5. Read the following line from the passage. Don't worry, I'm not going to fire either of you. How does this line contribute to the development of the plot? Whenever you see a question that asks, how does this line contribute to the development of the plot? Ask yourself, how do the details or events in this story affect what happens in the plot, affect what happens in the story? So how do the words, "Don't worry, I'm not going to fire either of you," how do those words affect what's going to happen later in the story? Do they A, suggest that Jasmine will end up taking Clarice's place permanently? Did these words signal to us that later in the story, Jasmine is going to take over Clarice's place and Clarice is going to get fired? No, we know from the very last line that they go on to perform together, and he says, "I'm not going to fire either one of you." So we know it's not A. B, it shows that Jasmine and her friend Clarice are in trouble. Does this signal to us that they're about to get in trouble? It starts with "Don't worry," and it says, "I'm not going to fire you." So it doesn't look like they're in trouble. He's telling them, actually, you are not in trouble. So we can get rid of B. C, it introduces 3 of the main characters in the story. Hold up, this came at the end of the story. Do we usually see main characters introduced at the end of the story? No way. So we can get rid of C. And then D, it shows that things will work out for Jasmine and Clarice. Is that true? Definitely. It signals that he is not going to fire them. In fact, he's going to do the opposite and give Jasmine a job. Things will work out between them. D. All right, let's look at the next passage. The next passage is about Britt and Evan, who are on a rafting, a boating, and overnight camping trip with their new mom, Mrs. Lutz. Question 6. How does the following description of the setting affect what happens in the story? By then it was getting darker by the minute and the first stars came out. So my question is asking me, out of these answer choices, which one of these events was caused by the setting getting darker and the stars coming out? A, it explains why the family has to build a campfire. Do they have to build a campfire because it's getting darker and because stars came out? Well, they might have had to build a campfire because it was getting darker, but do stars coming out necessarily mean you need to build a campfire? I'm on the fence about this one. This one looks half right and half wrong. I'm going to leave it as a possible choice. B, it suggests that there may be wild animals on the island. Does this setting suggest wild animals? It says it's getting dark and stars are coming out. It doesn't directly relate to wild animals at all. Get rid of B. C, it sets the scene for the story Miss Lutz later tells. It got darker and stars came out. Does that connect to the story that Miss Lutz later tells? The story she tells later is of the River Queen who watches over you when you see a shooting star. Would she be able to tell this story later in the plot if it had not gotten darker and the stars came out? No, the story wouldn't really work without the sky getting darker and the stars coming out. So is this a good answer choice? Absolutely. And then D, it shows it is darker here than in the city. Again, city's not really mentioned here. It doesn't directly connect to the city, so we can cross that one out. So our 2 choices are A, it explains why the family has to build a campfire, or B, it sets the scene for the story Mrs. Lutz later tells. So I have 2 good answer choices. I need to choose the best one out of the 2. Which one is the better one? Which one is the stronger answer? It explains why the family has to build a campfire. Do you have to have darkness and stars to build a campfire? Not necessarily. So is building a campfire a direct result of the sky getting darker and stars coming out? Not necessarily. You can build a campfire no matter how dark it is and whether you can see stars or not. So this is probably not the best choice. Let's check C just to be sure. It sets the